This video contains descriptions of real historical events, including violence and disturbing subject matter. All content is presented for educational purposes based on verified public records. Viewer discretion is advised. On a November night in 1987, viewers in Chicago were watching television when the picture suddenly cut out. In its place appeared a figure in a rubber mask, jerking back and forth in front of a sheet of spinning metal. For more than a minute, someone had seized control of the airwaves, on not one but two television stations, in a single night. The broadcast engineers were powerless to stop it. And nearly 40 years later, no one knows who did it. So who hijacked the signal, and how did they vanish completely? To understand this case, you have to understand how television worked in the 1980s. Before the internet, before streaming, broadcast television was the center of public life, and it was sent out over the air as a powerful radio signal from tall transmission towers. A television station did not beam its signal directly into your home from the studio. It sent the signal up to a transmitter, usually mounted high on a tower or a tall building, and the transmitter broadcast it across the city. That link between the studio and the transmitter was a vulnerability. In theory, if someone had the right equipment and enough power and knew exactly what they were doing, they could overpower that link and replace the station's signal with their own. This is called broadcast signal intrusion, and it is extraordinarily difficult. It requires specialized, powerful transmitting equipment. It requires real technical knowledge of how broadcasting works. And it requires the nerve to commit a serious federal crime in real time, live, in front of an entire city. It is so difficult and so rare that in the entire history of American television, there are only a handful of known cases. The most famous of them all happened in Chicago on the 22nd of November, 1987. And it happened twice in one night. Whoever did it chose a strange disguise. Not a political message. Not a ransom. They appeared wearing the mask of a character who, at that exact moment, was one of the most recognizable faces on television. The character was called Max Headroom. He was a computer-generated television personality, all sharp angles and glitching speech, the face of a certain idea of the high-tech future. He fronted adverts and a television show, and in 1987, he was everywhere. Whoever planned the hijacking chose his face to hide behind. The first intrusion happened just after 9 in the evening, during the sports segment of the nighttime news on a major Chicago station. The sportscaster was reading the day's results when the screen abruptly went black. Then it filled with the image of a person wearing a Max Headroom mask, bobbing and swaying, in front of a sheet of corrugated metal that was spinning behind them, mimicking the moving background the real character used. There was no intelligible audio, only a harsh buzzing distortion. It lasted only about half a minute. The station's engineers, realizing someone was overpowering their signal, scrambled to fight back. They changed the frequency of their studio to transmitter link and managed to knock the intruder off the air. The sportscaster returned, visibly thrown, and made an awkward joke about it. No one yet understood what they had just witnessed. About 2 hours later, the intruder came back. This time, the target was a different station entirely, the city's public television channel, which was broadcasting an episode of the science fiction series Doctor Who. And this time, the hijacker stayed on the air for much longer, around 90 seconds. The second broadcast was stranger and far more unsettling than the first. The masked figure spoke this time, though the audio was warped and difficult to follow. They rambled and ranted, referenced television personalities and brands, made odd noises, and behaved in a way that was deliberately chaotic and disturbing. The segment ended with a final bizarre scene that disturbed many of the people who saw it live. And then it was over. The signal cut out, the broadcast returned, and the figure in the mask was gone. The public television station had no engineers stationed at its remote transmitter that night, and there was nothing they could do to stop it from their studio. The intruder simply chose to stop and vanished from the airwaves as suddenly as they had appeared. By the next day, the hijacking was front-page news, and the Federal Communications Commission, the agency that regulates the airwaves, had opened a serious investigation. Broadcast signal intrusion is a federal crime, carrying heavy fines and the possibility of prison. And this was not a minor case. 2 stations, in the 3rd largest city in the country, taken over in one night. But the investigators ran into a wall almost immediately. The nature of the crime made it terribly hard to solve. A broadcast signal intrusion leaves almost no physical trace. The intruder did not need to enter either television station. They did not break in anywhere. They overpowered the signal from somewhere else in the city, from a van or a building or a rooftop, using their own transmitter, and then they simply switched it off and packed it away. There was no scene to examine, no fingerprints, no stolen property. Only a recording of the broadcast itself, and the knowledge that whoever did this understood broadcast engineering at a professional level. That last point became the center of the investigation. This was not a prank a random person could pull off. To overpower a commercial television transmitter, you would need equipment worth a great deal of money and the specialized knowledge to use it. The hijacker was almost certainly someone who worked in or near the broadcast or electronics industry. The pool of people capable of doing it was small. And yet, out of that small pool, no one was ever identified. The investigators studied the footage frame by frame. They looked at the spinning metal panel in the background, the mask, the clothing, the warped voice, searching for any clue to who was behind it. They considered the references the figure made, the brands and names mentioned, hoping they pointed to a person or a grievance. They examined the technical signature of the intrusion, hoping it would lead to a particular piece of equipment. None of it led anywhere. The references were obscure and chaotic, more like deliberate noise than a message. The mask was a mass-produced item sold in shops across the country. The equipment, while sophisticated, could not be traced to a single buyer. The voice was distorted beyond recognition. Whoever planned this had understood not just how to seize a signal, but how to leave nothing behind that could identify them. Over the years, theories and rumors have circulated. Some have claimed it was the work of disgruntled broadcast engineers, people with exactly the skills and access required, perhaps making a statement against the industry. Others have pointed to the underground world of technically gifted hobbyists who experimented with radio and television signals. Names have been floated online over the decades by people claiming inside knowledge. None has ever been confirmed. No one has ever been charged. What makes the Max Headroom incident so enduring is the way it sits exactly between the absurd and the genuinely unsettling. On one level, it is a person in a cheap mask dancing in front of a piece of metal. On another, it is a complete stranger reaching into hundreds of thousands of homes, uninvited, taking over the most trusted medium of its day, and then disappearing without a trace. It is a reminder of how fragile the systems we rely on really are, and how easily, for 90 seconds, someone can step through them and stand in front of an entire city, faceless and unaccountable. The case remains officially open. The footage still exists, studied endlessly by a new generation who find it online, decades after it aired. The mask, the spinning panel, the warped voice, all preserved exactly as they were broadcast. Everything about that night survives, except the one thing that matters: the identity of the person inside the mask. They committed one of the most brazen broadcast crimes in history in front of a huge live audience, and then they switched off their transmitter and walked back into the ordinary world and were never seen again. For 90 seconds on a November night, a stranger owned the airwaves of an entire city. They hid behind the face of a machine and spoke in a voice no one could understand. Then they switched off their signal and stepped back into the dark. We have the recording. We have watched it 1,000 times. And we still have no idea who was behind the mask. If you want to go deeper, the story of the Dyatlov Pass is waiting for you.